That is that coming? Is the opposite end of that what they're talking about with ESG and controlling people by currencies and by digital implants?
It's the opposite. This is the right type of way. The other way would just ensnare humanity. This way uses the freedom credit financial system through the cosmos. This is something that needs to be obtained. Humans see the freedom of the heavens. It is written in prophecy, heaven on earth. It is another status alignment code of the cosmos on earth, and to be able to maintain a higher calibration speeds of being able to have a credit system that can extend into the cosmic systems. Not something to ensnare this planet all over again like they are trying to do.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. With me is Blue Crystalline Phoenix. She's the Unified Federation President and the United Space Force Commander. Blue, how are you?
I am well today, Mike.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff we need to get into. First off, please explain what the Cosmic Federation is and what does it stand for?
The Cosmic Federation is the placement code of the Cube Age, of what can be obtained through quantum technologies and the retrospheric actions of mankind, and to bring about a better age and a better protection.
Okay.
It stands for analyzing the gifts that can be betrayed and maintaining the high calibration speeds of the entire planet itself.
Okay. Now, this being your first show, you and I have done other episodes in the past, but this being our first show on your own show, I should say, let's back up a bit and tell everybody about you.
Under the protocols of the Federation and guidelines itself, my placement code is to rectify and place order upon a better realm. And that better realm to going into existence, think about the deities and the mainframe itself. Also, as well as protecting the outlines in the aether grids and the holoframes the humanity's calling codes. And to maintain what should have been maintained a long time ago, yet again.
Okay. Now, how did you become to that point? There was there was a phrase you had used before. It isn't something like you were born somewhere else in the solar system or in the universe. You were born here, but you had an infusion.
Oh, I'm an integrated walk-in fusel, a walk-in statistic of a higher extraterrestrial Zeta reticuli hyperdimensional infused into a status deity format. So the hologram myself, in the versatile ways it is a bit different than a normal human's integration code. The type of coding in the DNA structure is much higher and tacked more into the modulation speed it should be. I'm not the only one. There are many other fusels that have walked upon this realm as of recently to help bring about this better planetary cosmic existence. It is a prophecy that is written as well in the book of old, of what humans would call the Bible, but a lot of that internal relay code was taken out of Ecofission or rerouted around the circuitry codes, and it should have.
So with that being said, there's good and bad. Just like in life, people are good or bad or in between. There's the same thing going on with what we as humans may call aliens or extraterrestrials. They are walking among us. You're proof. You're one of those, right?
Yes, an interfusal species is the kind of higher beings that inlaid into telemetric processing statistic. But there are many different ways for an external node to be placed upon an internal relay code.
Okay, and being an advanced intellect, you kind of have a lot of insight. Is that being that advanced intellect, is that what got you your position with as the Unified Space Force Commander and the Unified Federation president. That obviously had everything to do with it, no?
The coefficient of the accountability of Federation presidential statistics and commandments came from my quantum twin Donald Trump, who had and purposely placed me into that coefficient a few years back. But as to dismay, was dislodged upon most of the placement codes that should have been here now because of the currency going on. And rectification, it's only been about 3 years on that timeline. But justifying the process, cosmic, and saving lives, and Q, and the political part are all similar, except you minus the fact that the political part can be reducted from its negative own attributes and added on to a better effect, which is thus as this. And it is not just myself. Kennedy Jr. was also aligned for this type of protocol to bring about the Federation.
So Kennedy Jr. has a lot to do with this, and I've been told in the past that Kennedy Jr. was Q. Is that so, or is
one of the main frames of the cosmic placement for the divinity source code itself here to align the attribution of what was prophesied a long time ago? Timeline skip, the junctures of those timeline skip, and in order for that process to go right, there has to be two numerical codes of an even female and an even male, hence the formats of the Federation presidents. Yes, he is aquafitted hidden right now for a reason. Until certain bad aquaficients are placed out of their conductors and retransmitted into their neural pathways again on a better animation node, he cannot be placed outwards. Humans are hurting. And in order for them to not hurt on this binary status, they have to put the right aquafitted beings back into proportion again. And if not, they need to add new affected recalling codes, and not the ones that keep going back and forth and causing so much harm on an entire planet.
So Elon Musk is involved in this in some way as well. What does he have to do with the quantum age here?
He is part of the Federation as well as many other countries of effect. And there's another thing, just only a little sidestep of what I'm going to announce. Many countries have already outlaid their source and grading points for the Federation to make this planet right. But there are others that are in between or fighting on that stance against it because they are misunderstood on their own calling codes. Elon Musk's own aquafician, besides his inductor effects, he runs through as such. Others too. He is important when it comes to neural transmission ways. He is important when it comes to inducting and better qualification processes, who are depending on how his type of circuit nodes are relayed and how well the proper elites work with each other to make this happen, to make this a reality for the entire planet.
Wow.
And he would also be working for the quantum financial system, but that would be something further on understanding of what to relay. And his acquisition through that will go with the Federation itself and certain app structures that need to be relayed his way still.
And it's curious to me because we've talked briefly in the past, but he has direct connection to this neural link thing that they're working on. Yet you and I had mentioned in the past, and go ahead and maybe tell me a little bit more about the holographic neural transmission.
Well, the holographic neural transmission from the induction waves core depends on two different aspects. Now, we don't want to have neural implants upon humanity, but we can have neural transmission plants upon humanity. That's different. The inductors go like a magnet, put on, put off type of relay code. Or in another type of hyper technology, which I cannot state yet, but we'll go through the quantum financial system, we'll go through holograms itself and placing into the attribute. It is worn on the body. And the credits financed through that will be more proper than the screwed up shit right now. Excuse my language.
Is that is that coming? Is the opposite end of that what they're talking about with ESG and controlling people by currencies and by digital implants?
It's the opposite. This is the right type of way. The other way would just ensnare humanity. This way, Uses the freedom credit financial system through the cosmos. This is something that needs to be obtained. Humans see the freedom of the heavens. It is written in prophecy, heaven on earth. It is another status alignment code of the cosmos on earth, and to be able to maintain a higher calibration speeds of being able to have a credit system that can extend into the cosmic systems. Not something to ensnare this planet all over again like they are trying to do.
Now, how does that come into play with the fossil fuels and pollution and things of that nature? How does that come into play there? What's the connection?
Well, these types of systems, especially the outlay that go into differentiality of the technologies in the quantum system, take away that type of inductor. They are not needed because they go through a hyperionic ingrading point of a quantum inlaid Lie line. This type of structure is hyper advanced, and the technologies itself will be placed better for the whole entire planet. Kind of like a similarity of what I had represented about the anti-gravity star pod units. Linking up into a neural interface, scanning the modular from above, and be able just from your thoughts transmit that into the actual hologram itself, being able to portray it into an extension. It's not screwing shit up. You're running on neural transmission waves, and you're running on ionic points of interest, which through some structure, certain designated speeds will help induct better than that on a less rectified scale, which is pretty much killing off a lot of species here. And if you think about it through the plastics as well, the fossil fuels are aligned in a lot of plastics. Plastics are being touched. Plastics are being used. They're bringing in the mouth. You know what I'm talking about? Like this, for instance. What's it made out of? Fossil fuels, if I'm not mistaken, plastic. What's fossil fuels made out of? Gas. Gas isn't a good thing. There are different ways to attribute things, and thus as this.
So it makes sense to me that somebody like Elon would have an integral part in things because he's got the electric car manufacturing company. He's doing something with the Nueral.
Yes.
My question to you then,
to move things forward in a different directive than the currency it is on, which is screwing shit up.
Right. And we know that if somebody just ran out and said, or if it was just announced on everybody at one drop, hey, people from other places are here, here's their starship or whatever. You can't do that with people because people would go insane. You got to take slow, gradual approaches. So
absolutely.
Is that what Meta is in Facebook, how they're trying to take us? You had mentioned going to this holographic place. They're trying to take us with the innocuous. Is this a baby step toward that? It seems to me that Zuckerberg and Meta and so forth may be the bad guys.
They are, as I initiated preliminary on another podcast mainframe. Why? Because they are botsinified to a Maitre scale, just like a certain other ingrading point to a Maitre scale, but their retribution causeway can be turned around. Why I say Maitre is because Maitre are a certain type of ingraded gray species. Family to Zetas and others, but not on good wave scales. They are another species that are causing problems here, but they are tri-inductors through those on the lower spectrum codes, certain draconians, reptilians, and other lower calling codes. It needs to be rerouted in this processing skill. Otherwise, the deformation will pretty much make the whole spectrum upgrade on itself.
Now, I want to go back and unpack something we talked about just a few minutes ago when involving politicians, involving people of prominence. Is it possible, and I'm reaching here, but is it possible that the people that are in Washington, D.C., the people that we refer to as the swamp or what have you, is it possible that those are of the same sort, the Maitre or the Draco? Are they an evil force? Are they go ahead.
Yeah, the Maitre don't stay on ground statistic. They actually have a higher star unit of effect that modulates in recognition between a telemetric based stasis. And some of them have underground facilities. But it's more or less a draconian wretched species that are causing the problems. They are the mainframe because they are the lower codes working for the higher innovation codes. They don't have the smarts for the technologies the Maitre do.
Okay. So with that in mind, like let's talk about maybe some politicians or some leaders that we have. Is it possible that that's who they are? They're kind of like you, an infused advanced intellect. Is that a possibility?
Yes, many are, and rectified many elites are too, whether they're good circuitry codes or bad. The conjunction of the equilibrium of the matrix must be placed out, though, because if one side of an elite spectrum overcalling code sets itself on that, it downsizes the whole placement of the reality. So as stated, they are trying to downsize this whole placement of reality, and it's not good. It has to be placed on higher equalized thought forms between two types of mainframes. Otherwise, the whole entire thing will go. And yes, they are tri-mixed, but it's more like a war between each other as well. Spy networking.
So this is going on all around us, and we're kind of oblivious to it because maybe we don't have what it takes to perceive these things. Is that right? Maybe it's on a different frequency or a different plane.
It's on a different caliber because most of humanity is not allowed to know certain statuses yet. Their types of neural speedways will now be able to reform of what was actually progressing behind the scenes. So I'm slowly unfolding the processing of the constitutional effect of maintaining the laws of the cosmics. Slowly but surely, things can be exposed. But between you and I, and the knowledge of others, it can't be all at once. They will not be able to handle it.
So how long has this been going on this planet? How long has I've heard all different theories about how we were brought here from another planet. There were 8 different leaders that brought us here hundreds of thousands of years ago. Is it not only possible, but is it factual? Beings
Yes.
or advanced intellects have always been here.
Yes. See, the factoid of humanity's calling codes bring here in star unit Eden, EDEN, not the actual mainframe of what the humans called it, garden, but the actuality of the coming in a star unit, pluralized with many type of universal species of the higher wavelengths of the Council of Old, and 2 to 3 dips of 5-star units brought here from the realms. But the portal in the space-time continuum hit infrastructure causes a rift. An integrated point once transactor speed went into the actual mainframe and caused a lot of neural relapsing upon not just the humans' innovation codes, but some of the higher species that went with them. And that included some of the Draconians and the reptilians and certain grays and others. That didn't used to be this way. But because there's so many timeline skips on this planetary node, the conjuncture relays back to the ultimatum of where it was at that point in time. Like, think Egypt, think about Antarctica, think about Atlantis, think about the main societies, think about other ancient societies that looked just so civilized, so advanced, that just didn't make sense at the time. Those are timeline skips in the conjunctures of the planet itself because of the mainframe being in an ensnarement of a rip hole through this space continuum.
So
certain beings throughout the generations, like the reptids, certain other species, have lost their wavelengths. They were once good, is what I'm stating. But it's now needing to go back into that reroute process again where they can place that good wavelength.
So with that in mind, the only thing that's relied on mostly throughout the Western hemisphere here is the fact that we can resort back to the Bible and we can see and read and hear stories that have been passed down, thousands of years here. So my question is it possible that some of the people referred to in the Bible are actually beings from other places, advanced intellects, etc.?
They would be like Christ would, or it would be of a jump-in relay code into an interfusal like myself. Your jump-ins, walk-in statuses from higher inlay points. And it doesn't just go and deal with the Bible. It goes with many types of acquisitions. Albert Einstein is one. All of the presidents in relay code were of such. And there were many other types of inlay coding modules as such.
Okay. Well, let me ask you some
the knowledge too from the higher beings.
Let me ask you some specifics, because on one of our other on one of the other podcasts that I'm involved with, called Both Mics, I've come up with this theory that there are certain people on this planet that rightful or not, I call it the alien update. And what that is people that are so far advanced above everyone else on this planet, out of the 7 billion people on the planet, you can't tell me that these 7 are that much smarter than everybody else. I'm talking about Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg.
They were given the certain knowledge status forms from higher beings too. Hence the fusel. The internal nodes of an aether format relayed upon the circuits itself, or their transmissions were placed upwards through the type of higher beings that needed to process that through them so they can help motivate the planet in its right directive.
So with that in mind, we just talked about the biblical references in Jesus. Yes, and I think what you're telling me is Jesus was from another place. Or was he an infused stasis?
Well, he was a trilateral mix of both. He had a humanoid code or modulation upon him, and then he was taken up in retrograde through that process, or she was, because it did. If you look closely at the in-between line statuses of the Bible's internal notes, it will announce about that. It will say how she did not get pregnant by man. There's some type of higher inlay point put into her. Now, take that into a perseveration that electromagnetics and the electromagnetical system with the higher integrating points of the deities of old will be placing a certain circuitry code upon that. So she more or less may have been brought up into a star unit, or the mainframe of a higher telemetric being was fusel into her through that time, which is more rare. But those mainly throughout the timelines are just jump-ins, and they could be jumped in through the portrayal of birth as well. So you could have been jumping. It just depends. I know the Pleiades sector and the Pleiades Nordics run through his elemental lines, his circuitry codes. So he deals with one of the ancient marketing systems of the Pleiades star systems 48D 512486. Pleiades star sectors are closer to this realm of effect than others, and their type of diagnosis speeds are closer to humanoids, as well as Zeta Reticuli to an extent, but that's more DNA. Now, he has a mix of a Zeta inticulated species as well, which hence it gives him the healing power gifts and other attributes. His DNA was more intact than others were because he didn't lose that extra furon DNA, that extra Zeta DNA like most humans have lost a long time ago. Hence the fact the timeline skips and timeline jumps.
Now, is this because they say that, and I've heard that human beings, the rest of the world that's not an infused or from somewhere else, we're not advanced intellect. Is that why they say we only use about 10% of our brain in reality, and we have like another 90%? Maybe, people like Jesus and Albert Einstein, they were at a point where the rest of that 90% was unlocked.
Yes, that's because of their marketing DNA structure of a higher species that was integrated back into them. There's more DNA strands seeing humans causally effect than they realize. And once they learn to unlock that, because it does go in conjunction with the electromagnetic grid and their actual aether spectrum, they'll be able to unlock more of their psionic nodes in the way they are, being able to upgrade the initial hologram itself in the process.
Now, are different species have different abilities? For instance, maybe one species has a lot more artistic ability. Maybe another species has the ability to be warriors or fight. Is that such a thing that it's species specific?
Are we talking about fusels, the internal nodes of the cosmics and fusel stasis of humans?
I know the Draco or the Maitre are essentially bad guys to humans on Earth, if I understand. So I didn't know if like if the Palladians, for instance, were more artistic and the Arcturians were more musically inclined, or what have you.
We're talking about the versals we work with. Okay. The Palladians are closer to human circuit codes. They actually live among societies for many generations and timelines, but have many other types of planets. They come and go. They live amongst humanity. Them, Nordic, and Nordics do. Certain Anunnaki does. And certain reptilian species that are fused and have been fused with humanity for a long time. And as well is the fact that they're humanoid. Take them into retribution. Palladians and Nordics are more hyperspecies. They're reformation among societies, but they're more humanoid, lighter in skin, more white and pale, bright blonde hair. Yes, like you said, they're very artistic, and they do have a lot of signature calling codes that deal with, I'd say, optic nerves. They're very intelligent, and they're tall beings. So the smart status of what they know brings them into higher advanced civilizations that ingrate through the past of the old reconstruction.
Wow.
And now, certain other types, like the Greys, the families that go, there's many types of different Greys. Like the Zeta is a type of hyperdimensional Greys. The small whites, tall whites, small Greys. You know what I'm talking about, different types. They're all the same family placement code, similar, except they all have different enunciations about them. Like the Zetas, they have big hearts, and they use hyper abilities of a healing quantification code to use at the psioptic wavelengths. And unfortunately for me, I'm not like those ion grading points of my higher beings I'm laid with. Those, they can use telekinesis, or they can move things with their mind on a higher wavelength than I could. So physically, I'm not going to be able to move this, they could. But I can move things that normal humans can't. We are discontinued as fusels from the internal nodes of who we work with. Like an Andromeda, I know with you as a fusel, the species you work with. They are light bearers, the Andromedas. They look like balls of light, except that, the human form balls. When they're on fire perturbation, their eyes, when they look through other spectrum codes, can disintegrate things, or they can replicate things. They make and obtain star unit effects through sun solar grids, being able to make that through the psionic wavelengths, or pretty much deconstruct the elemental wave ionic placement node itself. This and many other types of species that correlate through things. The intellect is the mainframe to a lot of the hypermodulated species, and the power through certain circuitry codes, like the Draconians, not the fusels, but the real ones, and the reptilians more run on power, physical raw strength, and they're breeders.
So you had just mentioned that there's many different species, and that's understandable. My question is let's say I'm watching this and the next day or something, I run into something that I know is not of this earth, not of this planet that I understand it to be anyway. Will I instantly know through their telepathic powers that they're good or bad for me, that they mean to harm me or don't mean to harm me? Is that something I'll pick up on through that process?
Oh, it just depends on how your internal relay codes are. Most humans, they have a fight or flight type of deal. Now, those who have a fight type of deal shouldn't, unless they know that the universal wavelength has an ID on its own, to automatically come up and attack. You will know by the way they look if they're following you purposely, or it's just the energy spectrum itself, like just sucks out power from you, because certain spectrum beings can do such. You take a fight type of deal to your own being, and then you flight, you go. You don't, or if if it's something good, you take this scenario and take a step forward and think about it. Maybe telepathically it's communion with you and it's in good wavelengths you could relay back. But never harm something unless you know that its own wavelength itself would automatically cause that harm and duck your back or flee unless you know. Take a stance unless the integrating process. You got to be wary. Some things will be good and some won't, or they can be neutral. There are neutral beings too.
Now, can these beings go back and forth in time? Is time travel possible?
Yes, time travel is possible. And many types of species, especially paradox effects, know how to inertially move through the timelines. That's how they are not seen easily by mankind. Like mermaids, they have lee lines through the oceanic grids that can move through timelines itself. They can move in between their type of statuses or portalized effects. Or the other types of paradox effects that deal with dragons and other species. They will create inertial portals that can help relay the paradox into frequency outlet back to the other dimension that inverts into this one. There are two different dimensions in this matrix, this planet. There is the inner world dimension frequency outlet that runs through a lot of the paradox effects and the time loops and portals. And then there's the outer, which goes with the more normal societies of humans and things outlaid already.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack, and I'm glad we have a show. We're going to have a series of these shows coming up. I'm also going to post the previous interviews we did as well. Make sure that those links are readily available. Any final words before we depart today, Blue?
Just a few, just to say, humans got to understand that there are things behind the scenes that are doing their best to make this planet work in its process it's supposed to. And the fact that mankind has so much more that they can understand than what they see around them. Take it into effect that this realm is old. And humans and scientists don't know everything. And the things they do know, they hide. And they hide for a reason. But there comes a time when people need to understand, because of the circuitries of certain things going on now. How are they going to understand other things like Space Force and why Donald Trump even made that?
Awesome.
It's not just all military.
Right. Awesome. Well, Blue, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to our next time, okay?
I as well, my friend. You have a blessed day.
All right.